that Moscow's Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu should consider killing himself over Russia's military losses. That criticism comes after Vladimir Putin authorized the first partial mobilization of reservists in Russia since the Second World War. Sir Laurie Bristow is a former UK ambassador to Moscow.
Mr. Putin announced that partial mobilization, partly, I think, to try to seize the initiative back, but also partly to seize the initiative domestically. So there are growing signs of public discontent. Crucially, I think also signs now of potential splits within the elite. It's not delivering more manpower, more military effect on the battlefield. But what it's also doing is producing exactly the opposite, I think, of what was intended, which is mobilizing public opinion in Russia against Mr. Putin's war against Ukraine. So you've got these queues of people trying to leave Russia that you can literally see from space. If I were in the Kremlin, I would now be quite worried about the ability of the leadership actually to keep control.
And even on tightly controlled Russian state television, the criticism of the military's performance in Ukraine is mounting. The main news again, the White House says no change is being made to America's nuclear posture, despite President Biden's claim on Thursday night that the world may be heading towards Armageddon over the crisis in Ukraine. The latest jobs numbers in the United States have boosted the expectation that the Federal Reserve will soon raise interest rates again. And the Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to human rights activists from Russia, Ukraine and Belarus. There's more from us on Twitter @FeatureStory. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
This is the Onion Week in Review. A report by Stanford University researchers released Thursday found that Americans spend 90% of their waking hours staring at glowing rectangles. Researchers identified more than 30 varieties of iridescent rectangles, ranging from personal and work rectangles to rectangles that heat food and those that can fit right in one's pocket.
From the moment Americans wake up, they are captivated by these bright, pulsing rectangles. In fact, if you look at the data, it's hard to find a single minute when the public isn't captivated by these, I'm sorry, where were we?
In local news, a run-over squirrel is remembered as frantic and indecisive. And in other news, a trail of rose petals leads a wife to a sink full of dishes. Prince Fielder reports to spring training exactly the right amount overweight, and a local yard sale reeks of divorce. If you don't hear the sound of my voice the same time next week, alert my family and then visit theonion.com/newsbeat.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. As always, you're invited to call in, take control of the airwaves. It is a beautiful Friday evening. It's weird to be here on a Friday. This is only like the third or fourth time I've ever been here on a Friday, so it's weird. It's different, and, I like it. But with you today is Aria.
And Chris.
And as I was saying, you are invited to join the show, 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. Again, that's 603-283-6160. I'm sort of surprised they still let us do radio together, Chris, based on some of the conversations that we've had in the past.
Yeah.
But hey, it is what it is, right? I've got a story here that I think you would be interested in. Of course, you have a story about the First Amendment and coding and why it's an argument for why code is protected by the First Amendment, right? Which makes sense. It's literally words, right? I don't understand how there could be any ambiguity to this because it's speech.
They make up all sorts of like exceptions, like commercial speech is not protected as much as political speech, and they have tried to carve out various exceptions to the First Amendment.
Now, but commercial speech, is that like businesses? They are
like cigarette companies aren't allowed to advertise anymore. Things of that nature.
Well, this story here that I have, we're going to talk about that later. This story here is Meta. That's the company that now owns Facebook, or Facebook, the parent company that owns Facebook, changed its name to Meta. It's the same company, they just rebranded. They have warned that 1 million Facebook users have had their login information potentially compromised. And this is, and obviously I figured you would like this story because it bashes Facebook to some degree or not. I think I'm probably one of the few Free Talk Live hosts still on Facebook, But I find it useful. You know, despite all its flaws, it is useful to me.
Yeah, I get it. My position on it is that I'm not on Facebook, to be clear, but
are you on any social media?
I am. I'm on Mastodon.
Okay.
I don't know if Matrix counts as social media. I'm on Matrix. I'm on. I have a show. I guess that's not really social media though, I guess. But you can do comments like on the site where you download the show. I'm trying to think where else I am on.
Well, you're on Matrix, and that's basically just Discord, and Discord qualifies as social media. It's weird to think of the Matrix server as being social media, but I guess it is. It's weird. We tried defining social media at one point, and it became really vague and unclear what exactly is social media and what isn't.
It's weird because social media existed before social media. Except based if you have a broad enough definition, right?
Right, like BSS and things like that, or BBS is what I'm thinking.
BBS, IRC, like chat just in general.
Yeah.
AIM. I don't. But I think social media.
What's the fundamental difference between like IRC and Discord? Except one has more of a GUI.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess the only difference maybe certain chats systems wouldn't be social media because it's not one to many. But I don't know.
Good point. But Facebook is warning that 1 million users, they're warning 1 million users that their login information may have been compromised, not by Facebook, surprisingly enough, but through malicious apps. Meta's researchers found more than 400 malicious Android and Apple iOS apps this year that were designed to steal the personal Facebook login information of its users. Now, for those who don't know, when you download an app or when you install an app or you sign up for some website or something like that, you're typically presented with several ways in which you can create an account. There's usually the tried and true classic method of creating an account using your email address and a password. But there's easier, faster ways, usually, to create an account that's tied to your Facebook page or your Twitter page or whatever. And it's usually faster because that's just a single press of a button. And it automatically creates the account for you. That's instead of having to receive your email and click the link to prove you're a real person or whatever to confirm that it's your email, it just automatically does that via Facebook. And some of these apps presumably actually monitor what you're entering. They ask you for your login information or whatever. The whole convenient aspect of this to me is that it doesn't have to ask you for your Facebook login information, right? Like if I go to, let me think of some, like Amazon.com, and I sign in using my Facebook account, it's not going to ask me for my Facebook login. It's just going to pull that information from my browser where I'm already logged into Facebook. And I just have to click, use Facebook. And the browser will provide the rest of the information for me.
Is this not called single sign-on or something like that?
I don't know. It may be.
I think it is. When you have some account, whether it be Facebook or Google or whatever, and you use it to log into other websites, basically.
It's super convenient, and I like it. It's insecure, obviously, but
it's a bad idea all over. But
it is. But if you don't care about the thing, like me signing up for, I don't know, Discus, which is DISQUS, I think it's a chat service that's utilized on many different websites. You create an account in one place, and every website that uses Discuss, has notifications, and you can log into it or whatever. If it's something like that, I don't mind using my Facebook account or my Gmail or whatever because, worst case scenario, someone gets access to my notifications and can take control of my chats on the internet somewhere.
See, I understand using weak passwords because it's, lazy, right? But I don't understand using a single sign-on system. It just seems like a bad idea written all over it.
Well, password managers exist now, so I don't even understand weak passwords anymore. I used to be one of these people who had like 4 or 5 passwords, and depending on the security of the thing I was doing, I would alternate between them. Like if it was just Facebook, it would use the lower security one. If it was some banking app, it would use my higher security one. But eventually, I got out of that habit, and I started using a password manager, which allows me to just have one super crazy secure password and 2-factor authentication, not text messaging. Text messaging is not 2-factor authentication. It tries to be, but it isn't. It's too easy for someone to call up your phone company and say, hey, I lost my SIM card. Can you send me a new one? Oh, also, I moved. So can you send it to this address? And your phone company will do it.
I want to ask you a question, but you probably shouldn't answer it.
Okay.
How does it work for multiple systems?
What do you mean?
So if I'm on another system, that's not my primary system with my password manager, right? You won't be able to log in.
Yes and no. The password manager that I use is a browser extension, so I could just...
So it stores your passwords in the cloud?
No, actually it doesn't. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but it doesn't do that. Does it? I don't know, man. I don't know the intricacies of it, but I know that... See, now you have me doubting everything I've ever thought about LastPass, which is the password manager I use.
I have to say, I am very critical of password managers. I do not like the idea of password managers.
I don't think it stores it in the cloud. I think it's stored locally, and when I sign in, it finds some other browser out there that I'm signed in with, and it connects the two. I think that's how it works. But I'm not entirely sure.
That seems unlikely to me.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I don't know how it could possibly work if they're not stored in the cloud. And maybe they are, but they're encrypted.
It could be encrypted and
it's
stored in the cloud.
It's been a long time since I looked into it.
It's possible that the company that stores your passwords for you doesn't have access to the passwords because they're encrypted.
They don't. I know they don't have access to the passwords. That's why I always assumed it wasn't cloud, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, it has to be, right?
I think so. I'm pretty sure that's how it works, where they store them in the cloud. And here's the thing. I don't know about any particular password manager. I just think they're a bad idea all over. But what I do know is that there are security issues with a lot of these password managers where, your passwords will be stored on your computer and then it ends up on Apple or Google or whatever cloud. And then, of course, the government comes in and they want access to something. They just, subpoena it from Apple or Google, and magically all your passwords are in the government's hands.
That's one thing I like about LastPass. Now that I never figured out I never asked whether or not it was cloud hosted, but now that I've thought about it more, it pretty much has to be. But they don't have access to your password, so I'm assuming they're encrypted. I'm going to look into that because, I've been using it for a long time. It's like, if I need to switch to a different password manager, I should, if they're, But anyway, more of that coming up and more about how Facebook, this one sign-on thing is a bad idea. 603-283, even though I'm guilty of using it. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. Do you prefer to listen to Free Talk Live on your schedule on demand? You can find the link to our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. which features the daily digest of our radio show 7 days a week. Just drop our RSS feed into your favorite podcast client or subscribe to us on the large platforms if you prefer, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartMedia, Spotify, and Stitcher. All the links are at feeds.freetalklive.com. If the daily digests aren't enough for you and you really don't want to miss a moment of Free Talk Live, you can always sign up for our AMPS Patreon at amps.freetalklive.com for just $5 a month, and you'll get the full radio show without recorded commercials. Plus, you'll help us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. That's amps.freetalklive.com to join AMPS, or feeds.freetalklive.com to get our main podcast, or find us on the major podcast platforms. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and as always, you're invited to take control of the airwaves. Talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in. That's 603-283-6160. We're talking here about Meta and one sign-on systems that allow you to sign into other sites and services using like your Facebook and your Gmail and stuff like that. And that's different when you use your Gmail account for it. It's different from creating an account on that site using your email address and being sent, a confirmation to prove that it's actually your email address or whatever. And of course, this got us talking about password managers and security in general. And I had never really given it any thought before about how LastPass really works, which is the password manager that I use. But it is cloud-based, obviously. The more I thought about it, the more I realized it obviously had to be. But it does decrypt. It does encrypt your passwords, and your decryption key is never sent to the cloud. So, it's as secure as one could hope for something that is cloud-based. I'm not a particular fan of it being cloud-based. I hate cloud-based everything for the most part. I would rather store things myself. But when it comes to passwords, there really isn't a great solution to the password problem. You either have 5 million passwords, or you use the same 5-6 passwords on every different site.
Yeah, this is interesting. I think there's probably a place for password managers. I just don't think it's generally a good idea to use them.
Well, I would also suggest that it depends on what you're using it for.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't want to have the password to a crypto wallet stored inside a password manager, right? That would be something that either would be stored locally or in an encrypted file, or it would be stored in my brain.
That's an interesting question. I think it actually still depends. There could be, when you're talking about security, there's often advantages and disadvantages, and you kind of have to weigh them depending on what kind of adversary maybe you're concerned about, for example.
You're absolutely right. The whole security thing in the IT world is a trade-off between ease of access. What's the word I'm looking for?
Ease of use.
We saw that with user account control and Windows Vista, maybe it was Windows 7. I don't remember which one it was, but basically anytime you tried to do anything on your computer, it made you enter your password again until everyone went in and turned it off, which was the only way of making it go away. But you have the same issue with antiviruses, and the more secure your system is, like if you want a phone that's actually secure and it's not spying on you, it's not sending information to Google or whatever, you're going to lose access to a lot of things like YouTube.
I would say abandon your phone if that's what you're really looking for. Your phone is not secure.
No.
There's probably maybe 2 phones that exist that have like ever been manufactured that I would say you might be able to secure. And that's it.
Well, it's a losing battle for sure. But the whole model of this thing is that it's a Trojan horse that is constantly spying on me, that I carry around all the time, and I'm sacrificing some amount of my privacy for the convenience that it brings me.
Yeah, you can do better. Like you don't. Here's the thing. Let me back up a second. Let me quantify what I'm trying to say here. So, if you're concerned, it's more than likely the case that if there's a big enough adversary against you or interested in you, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, there's very little you can do about it. On the other hand, if you simply don't want your data in the hands of every other corporation out there, you can stop that. You can hinder a lot of that. So it depends on what your security concerns are. You can keep your information from going to Google and Microsoft and Apple. But if you're concerned about somebody breaking your encryption on your phone, that's if they're like a government or something like that, that's going to be a lot harder to accomplish.
Absolutely. It's definitely much easier to keep corporations out of your phone than it is to keep the government. And if someone wants in badly enough, there's probably a way to do it. The quantum computing is going to change things in the future, but at the moment, I believe there are charts out there that show that if you have, letters, numbers, symbols, and all of that, and it's at least like 32 characters, it's going to take like 8 billion years for someone to crack your password.
It's more about security is more about risk management. It's if you get I want to say a bulletproof door, but those really strong doors, it's not going to keep the government out. They're just going to drive a tank right through it, right? But on the other hand, if you're concerned about a bullet flying through the door, well, it may protect you.
It's very similar when it comes to corporations and stuff, at least. It's very similar to what happened in the first Purge movie when they pointed out that, the security system that they had in this house to protect it, it wasn't going to last forever. And the point of it wasn't to keep the occupants safe throughout the night. It was to make other houses look more tantalizing. So like if these corporations, they want to spy on you and you make it too hard for them, they're just going to say, screw it, let's just spy on this other person who isn't making it so difficult.
Yep.
And that's sort of what they want. Facebook wants someone who's going to install their app, and so does Twitter and all of these other places. And if you are putting too many hurdles in their way, then they don't have the resources or the time or even the desire to go out of their way to spy on you as an individual, because first of all, who are you and why would they care? But there are other targets that are easier for them to look into. Yeah, basically
corporate as a business, right? You're looking, generally speaking, when you want to make money, really want to make money, and that's basically corporations, you're focusing on the masses. That's where you're going to make your most money. It's not making $5 off each person. It's making 1 cent off each person. Because if you've got, 10 people and a niche industry and you make $5 off, you don't make that much. But if you have 300 million people or 3 billion people or something like that, then all of a sudden that 1 cent makes you a heck of a lot more money than the 10 people in some niche market that you might be able to focus on at $5 a pop.
Absolutely. So Meta said that the apps they identified were listed in Apple's App Store and Google Play Store as games, photo editors, health and lifestyle services, and other types of apps to trick people into downloading them. I'm not surprised to hear that about photo editors. This isn't the first time there were other photo editors recently that were stealing crypto passwords or something along those lines. I don't remember exactly what they were stealing, but photo editors, it seems in particular, are way up there in percentage of likelihood of being some sort of spyware or, some other tool to steal your data. Often, the malicious app would ask users to log in with Facebook and later steal their username and password, according to the company.
Why would you need to log in with Facebook to use a photo editing app of some kind?
I don't know. That's a really good question, right?
Right? Like, I mean, this should be like sending, like, yeah, I don't know, like, so it should be like, I don't know. To me, I would be like thinking like, what is wrong with? There's something wrong with this picture.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's the way these things work, right? If you're using a free app or a free service or a free game or whatever, then you're the thing that's for sale. I don't remember exactly what the phrase is. But,
often, yeah.
But if you're downloading a free photo editor or whatever, you're what's being sold. They're tracking you.
Often if you're paying for it too, you're also being sold though. So it's a little bit of a tricky thing. I have to be a little bit careful with that when saying that.
In general, it's true of your phone. Anything you install on your phone is going to be spyware. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. Do they have the First Amendment right to do this?
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The White House says no change is being made to America's nuclear posture, despite President Biden's claim on Thursday night that the world may be heading towards Armageddon over the crisis in Ukraine. The president told a private fundraising event that Vladimir Putin's threat to use nuclear weapons is the greatest challenge the world has faced since the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, speaking aboard Air Force One today, insisted the president did not seek to cause alarm.
He was reinforcing what we have been saying, which is how seriously we take these threats about nuclear weapons, as we have done when the Russians have made these threats throughout the conflict. So the kind of irresponsible rhetoric we have seen is no way for the leader of a nuclear-armed state to speak.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Friday that the Kremlin is preparing Russians for the use of nuclear weapons, but he says Moscow is not yet ready to authorize a nuclear strike. The United States has slapped sanctions on several companies it accuses of violating sanctions on North Korea. The move comes after Pyongyang fired 6 ballistic missiles over a 12-day period, all of them violations of UN Security Council resolutions. One of former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's closest allies has been suddenly fired by Prime Minister Liz Truss. Conor Burns was dismissed from his position as Trade Minister on Friday after serious allegations of misconduct were made against him relating to events at this week's Conservative Party conference in Birmingham. He's also had the Conservative whip removed while the claims are investigated. Noah Hoffman is a political correspondent for The Sun newspaper.
In the past, and particularly under the Boris Johnson administration, we saw a lot of dither and delay, but now we've seen very quick action from the whip's office. Conor Burns is no longer a minister. He's had the whip suspended sort of within minutes of that story going out.
Liverpool is to host the next Eurovision Song Contest. The original home of the Beatles, Merseyside has never before hosted the competition. Harry Doyle is Liverpool's deputy mayor.
I mean, it's unbelievable. When we threw our hat into the ring, we thought we are proud of our city. And let's be bold, did we think we were going to get the contest? The jury was out on that, but it's just amazing.
And of course, that event will take place in the UK after Ukraine conceded it would not be able to host the competition as planned. The Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to human rights activists from Russia, Ukraine and Belarus. Two organizations, the Ukrainian Center for Civil Liberties and Russia's Memorial, were honored alongside jailed Belarusian activist Ales Bialyatsky. The committee praised their outstanding efforts to document war crimes and protect civil liberties. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, where you're invited to take control of the airwaves, talk about whatever is important to you, share your secrets, not your actual secrets, but what is your method for managing your secrets, so to speak. 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Speaking of sites that don't require you to sign in every time you go there, though, Bitcoin.com is where you can go to learn about cryptocurrency. If you don't have any knowledge about this subject, it's time to go there. Click Getting Started at the top of the page and take just a few minutes out of your day. They have a couple of short videos that you can watch to just get down the basics of this important life-changing information. And you don't need an account to manage your cryptocurrency wallets or anything like that. That's one of the beauties of it, right? There is no centralized service with whom you can create an account to manage your money for you in the way that we have banks and these centralized systems. That's what makes cryptocurrency so unique, is that it is decentralized. And it also makes it a bit of a problem. So if you forget your, quote, password, which would be, your recovery keys or whatever, there's no one who can just reset it for you like there is at the bank. So it's important to learn about this stuff and the potential hazards of getting into it at bitcoin.com. But if you do already know, head on over to news.bitcoin.com to stay up to date on all of the news and headlines that are relevant to you. All of this on a sleek, easy to use website that, again, doesn't require you to have a password or a user account or any of this other stuff. There are parts of the site that would require you to do that, but Bitcoin.com in and of itself doesn't. It's absolutely amazing site. That's Bitcoin.com. Now, we're talking a bit about passwords and ways of managing passwords. There is no real easy way to do this, right? Like, it all depends on what you're trying to accomplish. A password manager is secure in a lot of ways, but it's not. I'm not going to put my most secure, my most important passwords in a password manager. Those are going to be, like, obviously the account managing the password for the password manager, because you have a one master password that unlocks all of your other passwords, right? For those who have never used it. That master password is obviously not going to be stored inside the password manager. It's going to be stored just inside my head, and it's going to be super complicated. But there are other things that I wouldn't want to be stored inside there as well, like decryption keys and stuff like that, or decryption passwords. I wouldn't want that to be stored in LastPass or any other password manager, but like my Amazon password, sure, why not? My Facebook password, sure. Again, emails, these little minor things that, yes, it would suck if they got hacked, but it wouldn't be the end of the world, or it wouldn't be devastating. It would just be an inconvenience. That's where I think a password manager comes in, with like managing your Facebook, your Twitter, your silly little social medias, your emails and stuff like that. And maybe your bank accounts and things like that, but maybe not your bank accounts. And if they are managing your bank accounts, you should at least have two-factor authentication on them.
Especially if you can move money out through your online account.
Yes. And for those who don't know what I mean by two-factor authentication, I don't mean when you sign in, they send you a text message.
Oh, gosh.
Because that used to work. But then we discovered that all someone has to do is find out who your mobile carrier is, which is super easy for them to do if they have your phone number. All they have to do is call up your mobile carrier and say they're you, and they need a new SIM card. They just got a new phone.
It was always a joke, the two-factor cellular SMS authentication thing. I never...
It's also because SMS isn't secure, right?
Right. Like, this has always been like, it may make it a little bit more difficult for somebody, but it's no, that's not the way two-factor authentication should be, and it wasn't the way it was originally done. The way it was originally done was basically I think they used to call them secure IDs, and I think they still exist, but they used this for like banks would use this, and particularly for like programmers, like connecting remotely, or anybody who is, doing some sort of job with a bank or other secure facility. They would
want someone to be able to connect to your banking institution's network remotely using a code that was texted to them, right? That's a terrible idea.
Yeah, right. That's a terrible idea. No, there are better solutions. There's Google has something called, I think, Authenticator, and that's a way better solution where you basically have it changing code on your device. And there's also dedicated versions of these dedicated devices that basically do the same thing. Because again, we're talking about your phone not being secure, but that is still better than the SMS two-factor authentication.
See, a lot of people probably don't understand that difference because they think, well, it's on my phone. What's the difference, right? There are authenticators. There's one available. There's an authenticator program that's available for Linux that's really, really convenient. There's also some for Windows. And the way these work, they're all more or less interchangeable, right? Google Authenticator, LastPass Authenticator, because LastPass also has an authenticator. I would recommend, if you're using LastPass's password manager, to not use their authenticator, just, to keep those two things separate. I don't know if that's, I don't know if using both is more insecure or not. I just know that me, as a user of LastPass, I don't want to use LastPass's authenticator. But, they all do the same thing where they take this code that's usually time-based and they output some other code. They all function the same way and they do exactly the same thing. So one is probably as secure as the other. So I don't think Google, as evil as they are, I don't think their authenticator is necessarily any more shady than any others, except Google may store that little password that you use to create the authentication mechanism. They may store that in their cloud. I don't know. But it is available for phone and stuff like that. For a lot of people, they have the Google Authenticator app and they get SMS text messages. And they just don't think there's a difference between opening this Authenticator app and opening their text messages to see. But see, in one of them, the authentication code travels to you from another server. And you don't want that because it can be intercepted, especially SMS, which just stands for, I think, Simple Messaging System.
Yeah.
And it's not encrypted. It's easy to intercept. And again, SIM hacking has been a thing for a very, very long time. And it's amazing how easy this actually is for hackers, right?
Yeah, it's social engineering is what it is. And it basically what happens is somebody calls up your phone company and says, I want to transfer, my phone number. They don't give their phone number. They give your phone number. And of course, your phone number is probably out there publicly. You've probably given it to other people. You post it to a forum somewhere or Craigslist or wherever. And so they have it moved to another SIM card. And then they stick that SIM card into their phone. And then all of a sudden they can receive text messages. So now they can get access to your bank account.
And it's that, and you would think that, it wouldn't be that easy, but it is. I use Sprint. Like I said, you can find out what mobile carrier people are using easily. But I use Sprint, and a few months ago, just out of nowhere, a SIM card arrived in the mail. And I was, oh, hold on, I'm not using this. This is shady, right? Yep. I didn't request a SIM card, and there's no reason why they should have just sent me one. So I just left it sitting there on my desk for a few weeks. I didn't really have the time to deal with it then. And I ended up contacting...
Don't tell me it was legit.
I ended up contacting them to find out, why the hell did you guys send me a SIM card? Well, we did send you a SIM card. It is legitimate, and it's because we just merged with T-Mobile. And so this new SIM card will allow you to access both the T-Mobile and the Sprint cell towers to make your signal a little more reliable or a little faster or whatever.
Yep.
So there was a legitimate reason for them to do it, but that's not the way companies should be doing this, right? Because someone could have stolen that. And then they could have just had all of my cell data, and I would never even known it was supposed to be coming.
Honestly, I would have expected somebody to call up your provider and have them say, hey, I lost my SIM or something like that, and get the provider to send you another SIM, and hopefully they can get to your mailbox before you do to pick up that SIM, and then they have access. I mean, that's another technique, for
That's true.
social engineering.
I didn't consider that. I didn't know where it came from, but I have security cameras trained on my mailbox, so that would have been silly of someone, but there's more of this tech talk coming up, including the First Amendment. It's not much more to say about passwords. It's a difficult situation, and there's no good answer to how to keep your passwords safe, but maybe you have a good idea. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up about the First Amendment, how it protects free coding is speech.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too,
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
Besides, we just can't have people floating about unregulated,
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means, stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. As always, you're invited to take control of the airwaves. You can talk about whatever's important to you. You can talk about tech security and the trade-offs of convenience for security, or whatever's important to you. The new possibility of nuclear war is what they're saying, and I just don't think it's very likely. But Americans are freaking out, stockpiling anti-radiation drugs and stuff like that. I don't think nuclear war is going to happen, and if there is going to be a nuclear war, I have to tell you, I don't think a pill is going to do you much good. I think at that point, just hold on and hope for the best. However, inflation is going to continue to happen. And we see that every single month that the new numbers come out. Inflation's record highs, 9.2%, 9.4%, numbers that mean nothing to people. But what you do know is when you go to the grocery store or you pay your electricity bill or whatever, it's more expensive than it used to be. That's the experience that we're all having right now. When I go to get something to eat, like I eat at one of my places around here, one of my favorite places to eat around here is a Belgian restaurant called Fritz. And for the longest, my order, including my tip, came out to an even $50 every single time, because I always ordered 2 meals at once when I got there, and I always tipped very, very well. So it always came out to exactly $50. But then over the last year, the prices have increased, where now if I was to tip the same amount, it would, hold on, let me rephrase that. $50 now would mean that the CSR at the receiving end would be getting $5 less as a tip, because that's about what has gone up, about 10 to 12%, something like that. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head exactly which percentage of that $50 was for food and which was tip. I don't remember. I do remember, however, that if I wanted to be fair and give the customer service representative, what I was tipping previously, I had to increase the pay to $55 for the order, which is a sizable difference in the amount of food costs. And we've seen it all over. Gasoline, of course, got to, I think, almost $5 per gallon. Heating oil here in New Hampshire got to $5 per gallon, and it's expected to get worse, regrettably. The electricity rates, everything is getting more expensive. And you may be wondering, what the hell can I do to protect myself from this nonsense? Well, there are ways of protecting yourself from inflation. Historically, gold and silver have been the best ways of hedging your bets against inflation. And bullionmax.com/FTL will allow you to do that. That's where you can buy gold and silver. I bought their silver starter package using that link, bullionmax.com/FTL. It was about $140, I think, a bit expensive for 5 ounces of gold, but 5 ounces of silver, that would be amazingly cheap for 5 ounces of gold. But it's a bit expensive for 5 ounces of silver, but you're not just paying for the raw silver, right? It's got the stamps on it, and it's dated, and it's absolutely beautiful pieces. It's not just, here's a 5 ounce bar of silver. It's actual coinage, and it's beautiful because it's silver. And silver, if you've never actually seen a silver coin, it's breathtakingly beautiful. They really are. And Bullion Max now has the gold back, which we've been promoting on FTL for a very long time. Not promoting because we're not sponsored by them in any means, but we love the hell out of them. It's great. It took gold and it reduced it into a quantity that is usable to the average person. Because the smallest unit of the goldback is the one. It's a thousandth of a troy ounce of gold. And I don't know if you know this, but if you wanted to carry around this $4 of gold as actual gold, it's going to be this little tiny little speck, and you're going to lose it. 100% going to lose it. You don't have to worry about that with the goldback. And you can get them now at bullionmax.com. They actually just released a new set of goldbacks that I meant to order last week and actually didn't get around to it. It's the Wyoming goldback. I think it's the Wyoming. So head on over to bullionmax.com/FTL to get those things. And these hopefully will allow you to protect yourself and your family as price increases only get worse as a result of inflation. I've got a story about inflation that I want to get into later on tonight. California, in order to fight inflation, has decided that the best course of action is to inflate the currency. They're now giving out...
Wait, what?
California, in order to combat inflation, is now giving out stimulus checks to all residents of California. which obviously is just going to make the problem worse. But that's not all governments can do.
How does printing money?
I don't know, man.
Printing more money. Printing money is how we got the inflation in the first place. Printing more of it's not going to reduce inflation.
I know that. It's by definition increasing inflation because it's an increase in the money supply, and the state of California isn't going to actually raise taxes to pay for this. And if they do raise taxes to pay for this, then it's a net loss for everyone involved, isn't it? If they're giving everyone $1,500 a month or whatever, but they have to raise taxes to pay people that amount of money, then why not just eliminate the tax and let you keep your $1,500 in the first place?
It gets worse because they have to collect something like $2,500 in order to give you $1,500.
Yes, because there's the middleman fee
Right.
and the processing and all of that other nonsense that goes into it. So it's a net loss for everyone involved. And that's what I don't think people understand about these stimulus checks and stuff like that. They're they'll tax people to pay for it, but they'll tax you to pay for it. They're literally going to steal $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 from you, do some nonsense with it, and then send you $1,500 back. And people will say, thank you, government. That's so helpful. I don't know why, but that's what they do. And so I guess we're going to get into that story now because I just closed out of it and I didn't mean to, but I can bring it back up real quickly. So yeah, that's the story. California, $1,050 is up to the payment that people are going to receive. California on Friday, they're already deploying this.
Okay, I got to ask, what are they doing for businesses? Because usually what happens is whatever they've done for you, they've done 10 times over for businesses. And so you're actually going to be paying way more than 30% cost overhead because most of that gets taken from you ends up going to the business, not you.
We'll see what the article has to say. I don't think it'll mention that, but California today began deploying one-time payments. So these are one-time payments. It's not recurring, at least, even though the price increases as a result of inflation by the government are continuing to increase. So they'll release more stimulus checks, right? That's what the government does. I'm surprised we haven't seen more stimulus checks from the federal government already. You know, they did the initial 600. Was the initial 1,200? The initial was 1,200. And then they did a 600. And then Trump said, this is stupid. Why not just make it an even 2,000? And they sent out another 1,400, if I remember correctly. One of them I didn't get for some reason. I think the $600 I didn't get. But the rest of it is money from the government that you can't even turn it down if you wanted to. They just send it to you. And I'm surprised we haven't seen more of those.
They send it to people who that didn't even, how do I say this? They're not even real.
It was, yeah, they sent it to dead people.
Yep, dead people.
A lot of dead people received these stimulus checks. But now California is sending them because the federal government evidently isn't. The highest amount, $1,050, will go to married couples with a dependent and $150,000 or less in income. Up to 23 million California residents are about to receive, quote, tax refunds. And I hate this. And we're about to go into tax season again. Like 3 months from now, people will be starting talking about their, quote, refunds again. And I hate everything about it. My sister is one of these people. I love my sister to death, but she talks about these tax refunds, and she's going to get one this year, this refund that's close to $10,000. That's what they got last year, and that's what they got the year before. And it's from having kids and all of this other nonsense. I don't know what goes into it, but apparently if you have kids, the government just bends over backwards to give you money. I don't know why, but almost everyone I know who has kids talks about getting multiple thousand, $3,000, $5,000, $6,000, up to $10,000, quote, back. That's the word they always use.
And the crazy thing is you never recuperate relative to the cost of having those kids, which always blows my mind because it's like it's not free money. You're not making money. You're just getting some of your own money back.
Well, I mean, having kids shouldn't be a way of making money. And if someone is going to have kids, they should be aware that this is going to cost a lot of time and a lot of money. And there's no way out of that. There's no shortcut around that. No way of government solving that problem for you. And people trying to get the government to solve that problem for them is how we end up with these child tax credits and government schools and all of this other nonsense. Government gives you the money to help pay for your kid, and they give you the daycare, which is the public school system. So you don't really even have to be a parent.
Where's
these
my
days.
single male tax credit?
Well, I don't know. But I think you should get one. But people who don't have kids stimulate the economy more than people who do have kids. So how about giving some single childless people some tax money? 603-283-6160. It is Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The White House says no change is being made to America's nuclear posture, despite President Biden's claim on Thursday night that the world may be heading towards Armageddon over the crisis in Ukraine. The president told a private fundraising event that Vladimir Putin's threat to use nuclear weapons is the greatest challenge the world has faced since the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, speaking aboard Air Force One today, insisted the president did not seek to cause alarm.
He was reinforcing what we have been saying, which is how seriously we take these threats about nuclear weapons, as we have done when the Russians have made these threats throughout the conflict. So the kind of irresponsible rhetoric we have seen is no way for the leader of a nuclear-armed state to speak.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Friday that the Kremlin is preparing Russians for the use of nuclear weapons, but he says Moscow is not yet ready to authorize a nuclear strike. The United States has slapped sanctions on several companies it accuses of violating sanctions on North Korea. The move comes after Pyongyang fired 6 ballistic missiles over a 12-day period, all of them violations of UN Security Council resolutions. One of former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's closest allies has been suddenly fired by Prime Minister Liz Truss. Conor Burns was dismissed from his position as Trade Minister on Friday after serious allegations of misconduct were made against him relating to events at this week's Conservative Party conference in Birmingham. He's also had the Conservative whip removed while the claims are investigated. Noah Hoffman is a political correspondent for The Sun newspaper.
In the past, and particularly under the Boris Johnson administration, we saw a lot of dither and delay, but now we've seen very quick action from the whip's office. Conor Burns is no longer a minister. He's had the whip suspended sort of within minutes of that story going out.
The latest jobs numbers in the US have boosted the expectation that the Federal Reserve will soon raise interest rates again. The economy added 263,000 new jobs in September. From FSN's bureau in New York, Gabrielle Farmy with more.
The latest data comes in the midst of historical efforts by the central bank to curb inflation. The Federal Reserve is eager to see a more balanced job market. And with the September report showing few signs of a hiring slowdown, many think this puts the nail in the coffin for another 75 basis point interest rate hike next month.
The Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to human rights activists from Russia, Ukraine and Belarus. Two organizations, the Ukrainian Center for Civil Liberties and Russia's Memorial, were honored alongside jailed Belarusian activist Ales Bialyatsky. The committee praised their outstanding efforts to document war crimes and protect civil liberties. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today in more depth at the problems besetting the Kremlin as Russia's military retreats in the face of a counter-offensive by Ukrainian forces. One top Russian-installed official in the annexed region of Kherson said on Thursday that Moscow's Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu should consider killing himself over Russia's military losses. That criticism comes after Vladimir Putin authorized the first partial mobilization of reservists in Russia since the Second World War. Sir Laurie Bristow is a former UK ambassador to Moscow.
Mr. Putin announced that partial mobilization, partly, I think, to try to seize the initiative back, but also partly to seize the initiative domestically. So, there are growing signs of public discontent. Crucially, I think also signs now of potential splits within the elite. It's not delivering more manpower, more military effect on the battlefield. But what it's also doing is producing exactly the opposite, I think, of what was intended, which is mobilizing public opinion in Russia against Mr. Putin's war against Ukraine. So you've got these queues of people trying to leave Russia that you can literally see from space. If I were in the Kremlin, I would now be quite worried about the ability of the leadership actually to keep control.
And even on tightly controlled Russian state television, the criticism of the military's performance in Ukraine is mounting. The main news again, the White House says no change is being made to America's nuclear posture, despite President Biden's claim on Thursday night that the world may be heading towards Armageddon over the crisis in Ukraine. The latest jobs numbers in the United States have boosted the expectation that the Federal Reserve will soon raise interest rates again. And the Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to human rights activists from Russia, Ukraine and Belarus. There's more from us on Twitter @FeatureStory. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
I was doing my regular 11 o'clock security sweep around the perimeter of my house when I noticed a couple of young people having intercourse in the front seat of a car out in the street. So I ran inside and I grabbed my video camera. As you can imagine, I stood in those bushes for over 20 minutes watching these two degenerates grind against each other, and I'm thinking, this behavior is simply unacceptable. Now, if you think this is an isolated incident, you are dead to rights wrong. I have 36 hours of footage to prove it that I have personally collected from sickos just around my own town. For example, I saw perverts having sex in swimming pools clearly visible from the roofs of adjacent buildings, on boats that anybody could see with a telescope, at night on the beaches where they can easily be watched by anyone hiding behind a fence wearing their night vision goggles. It's simply disgusting.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, where you're invited to take control of the airwaves. You can talk about whatever you want. 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. That's 603-283-6160. We were talking a bit earlier about password managers and things like that, and there is, again, no good solution to this. There are some people, of course, who, and I don't want to get back into the subject entirely, but we didn't fully flesh it out. There are some people who use a unique password for every single website and every single service, and that's the secure passwords, presumably sentences. That's the best way to do it, is to come up with a unique sentence for every. That way, you've got space bars, you've got capital letters, probably numbers in there at some point. But it's not easy. And password managers, they are sufficient for some needs and insufficient for others. It's a mess out there. The whole world is a mess, and there's no good answer to any of these issues. And one of these issues is inflation. As we've seen over the last, my entire life, the government has been inflating the currency, but
it's getting worse, way worse.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, which, I don't want to be one of those people, but if I hadn't been told by the media that there had been a pandemic, looking around, I wouldn't have any evidence whatsoever that there had been a pandemic, other than the lockdowns and the economic crashes and stuff like that. But that was caused by government in response to the pandemic.
If you look at the numbers too, it wasn't really that bad. It was I think it ended up being 3 times worse than the flu season, something like that in terms of deaths.
And a lot of those were probably the flu, for all we know. Because
that's true. It could also be the flu, the flu itself too.
And this year, what are they expecting this year? I don't know, but I don't think they're going to be able to sell the COVID fear like they had in past years. Time will tell, though. However, they're not going to stop inflating the currency anytime soon. This spat between Russia and Ukraine is just a new excuse for them to inflate the currency. And although the United States has not yet gotten involved in it, I tend to think the United States wants to be involved directly in the Ukraine-Russia conflict because it gives them an excuse to further inflate the currency.
That was kind of funny. Not involved. What about all the money they sent and all the weapons they've already sent?
I mean, directly involved.
Understood.
I think the U.S. government wants actual boots on the ground. I think they want to invade Russia. I really do. And I think the reason they haven't yet is because they haven't been given a good enough reason to. But I think that's what they want. And it's horrible, but that's the best way of them inflating the currency. And they want to do that because every time they do, they get richer and everyone else gets poorer. And they throw you little scraps like, here's your $600 stimulus check, or here's your $1,400, here's your $1,050, as they're doing in California now. Okay, that's all well and good, I guess, but what about the $80 billion that was just sent to Ukraine for them to pay for the war, right? Why couldn't that have been used back home? So this is a one-time stimulus from the state of California to up to 23 million Californians. It's costing $9.5 billion. So that is a sizable chunk of, it's a little over 10% of what was sent to Ukraine. So I don't know. It seems reasonable. Well, I mean, it's completely unreasonable, but at least the state of California is trying to also take care of Californians, I guess is what I'm trying to say. In addition to sending money to Ukraine to pay for war, they're also doing this.
I am so glad New Hampshire is not sending me money.
Yeah.
Because this is one of the reasons why New Hampshire, they were able to reduce the budget during COVID.
Did they?
They reduced the budget. They didn't reduce taxes. They reduced the budget. Taxes were reduced, but most states, when they reduce taxes, you pay it next year. You don't actually end up with any relief. It's just the impression of some sort of relief, and it ends up hurting more later. So.
This initiative is being called the Middle Class Tax Refund. And again, why do they call it a refund? This is what I began talking about in the last segment, right? These people, I wouldn't mind it if they were more honest about it. It's like, oh, I'm getting a $10,000 gift from the government or whatever, but they call it a refund. They say, I'm getting back $5,000 or I'm getting back $7,000. You're not getting it back because you didn't pay in anywhere near that amount in taxes. You're just living off welfare. You're not getting it back. You're just getting it. Cut the word back from the expression altogether.
Wait a minute. People who didn't pay taxes are getting this and they're calling it a refund?
They're not getting tax. They didn't pay taxes anywhere near that extent. Right? Like people like my sister who are getting, quote, back like $10,000.
Okay.
She didn't pay $10,000 in income taxes last year. I doubt she even paid in $1,000. It was probably closer to like $300-400 in federal income taxes.
Was it? So I'm kind of curious because there's also employers taking money out. Well, or is she one of these people who work under the table? That's exactly it.
The employer is taking the money out and they're paying that money to the federal government. But it doesn't come anywhere near $10,000. Right? The average person isn't paying anywhere near that amount in federal taxes. When you look at their federal withholding, it's like maybe $50 a week or something like that.
Yeah, but the withholding is only half of it. So it's...
What do you mean?
Well, so every time, as an employer, I know this, but when I hire somebody, there's what shows up on the the employee's paycheck as, money being taken out of your pay, but then there's double that because there's another amount that the employer is paying on to have you as an employee on top of that. So the
employer is paying that, not the employee. I mean the employee themselves who gets a tax quote refund.
Sure, but effectively it would be your money otherwise. I mean, you'd end up with a larger paycheck. It's just an amount that you're not told about.
I suppose, but even so, that number doesn't come anywhere near the amount that people are getting quote back from the government. Like you have your McDonald's workers who have 3 kids or whatever, they make $12 an hour and maybe $40 a week is going to federal taxes and they're going to get back $6,000 in January when they do their taxes or whatever. They're not paying in anywhere near the amount that they're getting on their refund. And it's not a refund. It's not getting the money back. It's just getting it.
Well, where's that money coming from?
Other people who do pay in, like the upper 1%, business taxes, property taxes, and just inflation in general. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it depends on whether we're talking about the federal government or state government, right?
Well, it's the federal government that they get the biggest tax refunds from. I think most state governments, they just get back what they pay in. I mean, that's how it was in Mississippi, at least.
I'm not entirely sure, but I can tell you that you may be paying some of that through other means like increased cost of goods. People don't think of this as taxes, but for example, when a company imports goods, because everything's made in China, there might be a 15% tariff or a 25% tariff. And for the last couple of years, there have been. So
but we're talking strictly about federal income taxes here, which everyone who has a job pays federal income taxes.
Yep.
And every year you have to do your W-2 or whatever. You get your W-2s and you have to fill out your 1099 or 1040 or whatever. And you get a tax refund, or the government says, oh, it turns out you didn't pay enough. For some people, usually business owners and stuff like that, or people who work as independent contractors, they say, oh, you didn't pay enough, you have to pay in this additional amount or whatever. But for most people, your average American, the government's going to say, oh, well, you actually qualify for this earned income credit, so here's an extra $600 just for existing and being over the age of 25. Oh, and look, you're also married, so here's an additional $1,200. Oh, and you also have 3 kids, so here's an additional $6,000. That's how it really works for people. And they end up getting these enormous tax refunds or these tax checks that are 10, 20, 30 times the amount that they actually paid in taxes, in federal income taxes at least. There's also things like sales tax and stuff like that. And if you add in every single tax out there, they probably did pay that amount in taxes, if not more.
Yeah, that's just what I was trying to say. It's like... I feel like it's like you're presenting people with this idea that we should just increase those numbers. I should get even more money back if that's the case, right? But
no, I think the whole system of taxation should be abolished, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't think that this system of wealth redistribution that we're using now to reward people for irresponsible decisions is a good idea.
Oh, no, terrible.
And that's effectively what it does. The more kids you have, the more money the government gives you. What the hell is that? 603-283-6160. It just drives me nuts seeing people doing this. There's more coming up. It is Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the free private cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. FreePrivateCities.com.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project early movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where your calls and thoughts are welcome. You can share your opinions, 603-283-6160. If you want to weigh in on whatever you'd like, you can talk about security, passwords, how you manage living in the digital world where everyone wants to spy on you. And really, you're carrying around a piece of hardware all the time that makes it easier for people to spy on you. How you manage that? 603-283-6160, or you can talk about, cryptocurrency, gold, silver, whatever's important to you. We have Creighton on the line from Kentucky. Creighton, you're on Free Talk Live.
Thank you. I wanted to call in because you mentioned the gold back earlier in the show, and I've heard this come up many times, and I've looked it up, and it's beautiful. But
yeah, they absolutely are beautiful.
It has a fairly high signerage premium to it, and I'm wondering what problem do you guys see that it's solving that Bitcoin over Lightning Network does not solve?
All right, I mean, fair question, I guess. Bitcoin over Lightning Network, it's not easy for the average person to use. Goldbacks are very easy for the average person to use. It's as easy for them to use as cash. All they have to do is pull it out and hand it to someone. And it's that simple. Using Bitcoin over the Lightning Network is not that simple. You have to know how. You have to know the ins and outs of cryptocurrency and to use the Goldback. You don't have to know anything about gold and how it functions or currency or any of that. You just have to know, hey, this is a piece of gold. This is a piece of currency that's worth, this amount. But you have to know how to set up a connection to a node. You have to send a certain amount of Bitcoin to that node in order to establish that connection and keep it open. And
the Lightning Network is just way harder than cryptocurrency is in general, I think. It has more to do with the tools probably and the rollout, at least as it has occurred thus far. As somebody who uses cryptocurrency on a daily basis, I can say it's not easy.
No, but cryptocurrency is easy.
Cryptocurrency is, but not the Lightning Network. Lightning Network is like, yeah, that's not something that, at least at this point, and it's been years we've been waiting for it, and it just hasn't ever materialized.
I've used the Lightning Network once, and that was to go ahead.
I'll use the Lightning Network occasionally. I actually have it on my phone, but I understand that response. That makes sense to me. But that brings up a different question. What is it about the gold back that solves the problem that a silver dime doesn't?
Well, it doesn't solve anything that a silver dime doesn't do. Gold and silver, I think, are complementary to me. The gold back is pretty, silver is pretty, but as far as $20 worth in gold backs, a gold back 5 is worth about $20, or an ounce of silver. They're pretty interchangeable to me.
I think I can answer that question. The goldback is something that's easy to understand. It's easy to see. It's very much like something I already understand, which is dollars, right? And it fits in my wallet just like the dollar. I don't like to have lots of change on me, but the dollars don't bother me. And the same thing would be the case with the goldbacks. Whereas a silver dime, I don't want a lot of silver dimes in my pocket. On the other hand, a bill, yeah, I mean.
That's also a really good point. If you want to carry around, $300 or $400 in silver, that's going to become fairly heavy fairly quickly.
That would be heavy.
I think this is the difference between people who actually are using how do I say this?
Alternative currencies, maybe?
Yeah, maybe, or I want to say physical metals, right?
Okay.
As a currency, and those who are just collectors, right? A collector, it's not going to make any difference to. But for somebody who wants to actually use it, in daily commerce, I think they beat out silver coins, by a large margin in terms of usability.
I have to agree with that. I'm a fan of both, but
I'm not against silver coins. Right. It's just that this is simple. This is easy.
I like the silver coins a little bit better because I know that it's pure silver. Well, I mean, if I trust people like Silver Dave or, bullionmax.com to send me pure silver, and I do. But if I need to, I can smelt that down and get the raw silver for whatever reason, or, it simply is silver and it's exchangeable as silver. Getting the gold out of the gold back is not an easy process, and it's beyond the ability of an average person. Like, even if you have an ounce,
it's not even cost effective.
No, if you have, $4,000 worth of gold backs, or about an ounce of gold in gold backs, you can't just throw that in a furnace and smelt it down to get your ounce of gold out of it. And that's the one thing I don't like about the gold back. In order to get the gold out, you have to use this special process that's beyond the capabilities of the average person. Whereas silver coins, it's right there. You have the silver. But
I've certainly considered buying them just for the art, but I find it hard to justify the premium as an exchange value.
Right, I understand that. I mean, the premium is a catch for many people, and when they were first used at the Porcupine Freedom Festival and Forkfest a few years ago, that was one of the issues we had with people. That I think it was $3 each then, but the value in gold of a gold back was something like $2 and something. People were like, but why am I paying $3 for this when it's not $3 worth of gold?
I think the best answer to that is I don't care. If I'm paying, first of all, I would rather receive gold backs, right? I don't want to buy gold backs. I want to receive them. But to the extent that I am buying them, as long as I'm able to spend them at the price that I bought them at, I don't care. And I don't know why anybody else would either. If you want to use gold backs, use them for what they were designed. Use them as a currency. And if you don't, if that's not what you want, then maybe the silver dimes are what you want, not the gold backs.
That's a really good point. Of course, the cryptocurrency does have another advantage over gold and silver, and that is ease of use online.
Absolutely.
You can't transmit a gold back over the internet or a silver coin over the internet. You can transmit Bitcoin whether the Lightning Network or through the main net or however you want to do it, or whatever cryptocurrency you want to use. You can't make gold and silver payments online easily without using something like a gold-backed cryptocurrency. And then you have to worry about whether or not it's actually gold-backed. And then you're not even sending gold and silver. You're sending a cryptocurrency that allegedly is backed by gold and silver.
It's like an IOU.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are advantages to each one of these. I don't think they are direct competitors with one another. I view them as complementing one another.
I don't think that's quite accurate. I think they're competitors with each other, but they're complementary at the same time, right? Because I certainly can use cryptocurrencies and gold backs, and one is sort of competing, when I'm going to make a purchase for something, and both gold back and cryptocurrencies are accepted at whatever that place is.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone outside of Keene even can imagine what it's like to have that
outside New Hampshire,
problem.
yeah, definitely.
Well, I mean, it's more common here in Keene, where you go to a restaurant.
Liberty, amongst the New Hampshire Liberty, people, it's common.
Yes, but they don't all run restaurants or grocery stores or whatever.
Sure, but there's lots of, merchants interacting with, others within our community. So it's
603-283-6160. It is Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The White House says no change is being made to America's nuclear posture, despite President Biden's claim on Thursday night that the world may be heading towards Armageddon over the crisis in Ukraine. The president told a private fundraising event that Vladimir Putin's threat to use nuclear weapons is the greatest challenge the world has faced since the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, speaking aboard Air Force One today, insisted the president did not seek to cause alarm.
He was reinforcing what we have been saying, which is how seriously we take these threats about nuclear weapons, as we have done when the Russians have made these threats throughout the conflict. So the kind of irresponsible rhetoric we have seen is no way for the leader of a nuclear-armed state to speak.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Friday that the Kremlin is preparing Russians for the use of nuclear weapons, but he says Moscow is not yet ready to authorize a nuclear strike. The United States has slapped sanctions on several companies it accuses of violating sanctions on North Korea. The move comes after Pyongyang fired 6 ballistic missiles over a 12-day period, all of them violations of UN Security Council resolutions. One of former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's closest allies has been suddenly fired by Prime Minister Liz Truss. Conor Burns was dismissed from his position as Trade Minister on Friday after serious allegations of misconduct were made against him relating to events at this week's Conservative Party conference in Birmingham. He's also had the Conservative whip removed while the claims are investigated. Noah Hoffman is a political political correspondent for the Sun newspaper.
In the past, and particularly under the Boris Johnson administration, we saw a lot of dither and delay, but now we've seen very quick action from the whip's office. Conor Burns is no longer a minister. He's had the whip suspended sort of within minutes of that story going out.
The latest jobs numbers in the US have boosted the expectation that the Federal Reserve will soon raise interest rates again. The economy added 263,000 new jobs in September. From FSN's bureau in New York, Gabrielle Farmi with more.
The latest data comes in the midst of historical efforts by the central bank to curb inflation. The Federal Reserve is eager to see a more balanced job market, and with the September report showing few signs of a hiring slowdown, many think this puts the nail in the coffin for another 75 basis point interest rate hike next month.
The Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to human rights activists from Russia, Ukraine and Belarus. Two organizations, the Ukrainian Center for Civil Liberties and Russia's Memorial, were honored, alongside jailed Belarusian activist Ales Bialyatsky. The committee praised their outstanding efforts to document war crimes and protect civil liberties. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, where you're invited to take control of the airwaves. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. That's 603-283-6160. Having a bit of a discussion about alternative currencies here, and this is an important discussion to have because the reality is that governments around the world are doing everything they can to destroy you. And that's the most effective way of doing that is to destroy your currency, the money that you need on a day-to-day basis. Most people don't think anything about money. And that's the real tragedy that we have in today's world. It's like, this is what you use to survive. It's what you use to provide for your family, to provide for yourself, to keep yourself safe, to get from A to B, to do everything in your life. It takes money. And most people don't give any thought to that whatsoever. And one institution has control over your money. And it just so happens to be the most evil institution known to man. And that is government. You can't trust them. And as proof you can't trust them, well, we've been advertising this thing here. If you've worked or lived at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988, 35-year period, and you've suffered from cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, you are entitled to compensation. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these diseases. There may be deadlines, so don't wait. Call to see if you or a loved one are eligible. 888-918-1037. That's 888-918-1037. So if you were at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988, call that number. Because governments, they don't care. I'm surprised governments are taking any responsibility for this whatsoever, based on what I know about governments experimenting on people. Project MK Ultra, the Tuskegee experiments, there's all kinds of reasons not to trust governments, and yet people continue to do so, and they trust them with not just in general, but the most important aspect of their lives, which is the currency. And you can't do that. You can't trust them. And as proof of that, California is now giving out a middle-class tax refund, is what they're calling it. It comes as inflation has nationally reached historic highs. California had a record $97.5 billion surplus this year, which is surprising. I didn't think that California was going to be a net tax payer to the federal government, but evidently they are. It finalized its budget, including, well, that doesn't mean, it just means it raises more money in taxes than it actually spends. It doesn't mean that it pays more to the federal government than it receives. which New Hampshire does.
California, I know they go back and forth between not having enough funds, or not having raised. How would I say that? Not having collected enough in taxes, to having a surplus.
I just avoid California altogether if I can. I certainly. I suspect they have a fairly high tax rate, so I would be stunned if they didn't always have a surplus.
I think the problem with California in particular is it highly depends on how the economy is doing.
Okay.
And yeah,
Sure.
some years, I mean, you got like Hollywood and you got the IT world, and sometimes tech companies are doing really well and sometimes they're not.
So California Governor Gavin Newsom says, we know it's expensive right now, and California is putting money back into your pockets to help. Well, that may be true, because this money was originally raised, it sounds like, from California taxes. So these would actually be refunds to the people of California, whereas most of the tax refunds aren't actual refunds. But this is like property taxes and state sales taxes, state income taxes, and things like that. That's what caused this surplus to exist. And they're, quote, giving back about 10% of that surplus. Remember, they have a $97.5 billion surplus this year, but they're only giving you, the taxpayer in California, $9.5 billion. You may be wondering, why? I don't know. Like, it seems to me that they had this $97 billion surplus, all of it should go back to the people. But, of course, that's not what they're going to do. We're sending out refunds worth over $1,000 to help families pay for everything from groceries to gas. And it's a Band-Aid at best. New Hampshire was considering something along the same lines recently. They were like going to give
something that proposed by the Democrats, though.
I don't remember exactly who proposed it, but they wanted to like give a gas card or something like that to every resident of New Hampshire.
I don't think it was going anywhere, but
oh, thank goodness.
Yeah,
because that's such a cheap, shady. Why isn't this considered buying votes? It's so shady. It's so underhanded. It's buying votes.
Republicans and Democrats do it all the time. It's like how they get elected. They promise their people who will vote for them, right? Something, and then they get votes from those people.
And somehow people don't consider it buying votes.
I know. I totally agree with you.
I am so ready for the elections to be over. I don't watch a lot of ads, but my television, I can't seem to find a way of ad blocking YouTube or from it. I didn't phrase that correctly. But like with my computer, I can just install an ad block and then completely forget that YouTube even has ads, because I did for a very long time forget that YouTube has ads. But my television, when I watch YouTube on it, doesn't offer me that particular perk. I can't install an ad blocker to my television that I figured out how to do yet.
I didn't realize people actually use the television to watch YouTube.
Yeah, to watch anything.
I knew that was a functionality of the smart television, but
well, mine's not really even a smart television, right? It's just it supports apps. When I think of
what a smart television is?
See, when I think of a smart device, I think of something that thinks.
Oh, you're thinking of like,
and that's what makes it smart.
AI, artificial intelligence.
I guess.
But that's not what a smart television is. Smart television just basically means you can install apps on your television.
But that's a dumb television.
No, a dumb television would be like your old analog, televisions that don't have any update capabilities.
I just don't see my television as being smart just because
it's not.
I guess I disagree with people.
Are stupid, but
yeah. I guess I disagree with people on what a smart television is, but yeah, it's super convenient.
Yeah. So I'm used to having, all right, so I might have a smart television, but I don't use the smart television. I have a computer hooked up to the television.
Right.
And to me, that's like how I see, it doesn't even occur to me that people would actually use the apps on their television to watch television.
I think most people do.
I think you're probably right. I don't know. It's just like, it just seems so weird to me.
When I had a computer in my bedroom, it was a lot better because then I would just, switch over to my PC input and throw up a browser, hit full screen and watch whatever I wanted and not have to deal with the ads.
See, that's how I would think most people would watch television, because
most people don't know you can hook a computer up to a television. It's so crazy.
I know, but like, isn't that how people were watching televisions before smart televisions?
No, they were watching like Comcast and cable and, that kind of stuff.
No, they had like little devices like Roku devices and things like that, right?
I think Roku is just a smart television for people who can't afford a smart television.
Roku was the smart television that you plugged into the television before smart televisions.
Right.
But they still have Rokus and similar types of devices that you plug in, and they're more powerful than what's, I would think, on most people's smart televisions.
Are they?
I think so.
I thought they were just different. I thought it was for like people who wanted the $200 television instead of the $600 one. I'm not an expert. I've never used a Roku, so I don't know. I could be wrong.
I have only touched a Roku like once for somebody else, so I don't really know that much about it. But
I've never used one because my television does all that crap already. It's got all the apps and stuff. But it does have the benefit of, it does have the downside of not being able to simply use an ad blocker on it. And I'm sure there's, router levels, ad blocks and stuff like that I could set up and just haven't yet.
Yeah, that might work too.
I don't know. I wish I had a better solution. Why isn't there an ad block for my television? Seriously, there should be. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It is Free Talk Live.
You know how annoying it is when someone keeps stopping mid-sentence as though he or she were asking you a series of questions? Avoid doing that. It sounds unnervingly tentative, and it imposes upon the listener to help you complete the thought. And if you're a job seeker, this alone could be a deal killer. An effective communicator sounds more confident. Complete the thought. Avoid making the listener impatient. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important. Cutting through the clutter rather than blending into the blah, blah, blah will help you connect better no matter what the conversation. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook. Survivalspeech.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Free Talk Live.
So we had a guy call in on Saturday, and he was really kind of befuddled as to why anyone would alter their consciousness at all. Like, he had done a little bit of drinking when he was younger, but he's an older guy, and he just really couldn't get it. And I imagine it's really kind of difficult for somebody who doesn't get it. It's really easy to look down your nose at that point. I imagine it's really difficult for people like that to understand, but the fact is that if you're not altering your consciousness as a being on this planet, you're probably in the minority.
Or at some point in your life. Because some people, they kind of get out of it when they get older for whatever reason. They just get tired of it, or they've had enough of that experience.
By definition, caffeine is a drug.
It sure is.
Absolutely. It's a consciousness altering drug to some
Wait
extent.
until you give me a can of Diet Coke. I will flip out right here.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, where you're invited to take control of the airwaves and talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160. If you want to do that, that's 603-283-6160. Your calls and thoughts are welcome. We're talking about the way that the governments around the world, especially here in the United States, have been incentivizing bad decisions or irresponsible decisions, however you wish to characterize it. There's a long trend, a long history of rewarding people for having children.
Yeah, incentivizing poor decision making is the best way to phrase it, I think.
Yeah. And for most people, having children isn't even a bad decision. It's not a decision at all. It's just something that they do because they think that's what they're supposed to do. They don't put any thought into it whatsoever. They just think, oh, well, I'm an adult now, time to pop out some kids or whatever. I know very, very few people who actually sat down and was like, you know what? We're at a point in our lives. Let's plan out the next 5 to 10 years. And, you know, if A comes true and B comes true and C comes true, then we'll have kids. Most people that I've ever met through my entire life were just like, yeah, I got knocked up. Or, yeah, I got my wife pregnant or my girlfriend pregnant or whatever. It's like, these things don't happen accidentally, right? It's irresponsible for people. I wouldn't bring home a cat without giving it a lot of serious consideration. And these people are just having children without giving it any consideration whatsoever.
You know, I think there's a mix in our society where there are people who plan it out better, but I think there's definitely a segment of society that you're talking about, and I haven't encountered this as much, I think, as you, but there's...
Well, I'm from Mississippi, where it's extremely common.
So I am totally understanding where you're coming from. I know, like, my brother and I think me and my older brother anyway, I think we were, how do I say this? Let's see. He was planned for, I was attempted, and let's see, it didn't happen for a long time, for many years. And then my youngest brother was unplanned for. So. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's still family planning, right? In my experience with people, they don't plan at all. They don't plan any of them. And the government then turns around and rewards them for that. Like here, we're talking about the state of California giving out stimulus checks, quote, refunds. And these do actually appear to be refunds, totaling about $9.5 billion. Payments for eligible couples, just for being married, you're going to get more money here. That frustrates me as a single unmarried person. It's like, what part of being married, of getting the government involved in their relationship, warrants getting back more money? It's like a reward. Hey, you got the government involved in your relationship. Here's some extra money. So those couples will qualify for $400 to $1,050, which is the maximum amount. Qualifying individuals may receive $200 to $700. And I realize that, you know, for the qualifying couples on the low end, it's just 2 individual payments of $400, totaling $400. But you could get up to $1,050 just for being married, whereas being single, the best you're going to get is $700. So,
yeah, I mean, this all comes down to, as you were saying before, buying votes. That's what the politicians are doing. They're buying votes.
Yeah, and most people are married, so it kind of makes sense that they would give these tax breaks and these perks to people who are married. The amount of the checks depends on two factors, income and the number of dependents, that is, the number of children. The most generous amount, $1,050, goes to married couples. What about single moms out there, right? I would suspect that a single mom would need this money more than a married couple, but whatever. $1,050 is going to married couples who filed jointly with $150,000 or less in income, which is the vast majority of people, and who have a dependent.
See, you're assuming it's about need, and it's not about need. It's never been about need. If it was about need, we wouldn't have any homeless people. It's always about buying votes. That's what it comes down to.
Well, I know that the government doesn't care about, the single moms out there or how much people are struggling.
No.
If they did, they wouldn't incentivize people for having children. They would be like, hey, the rent's going up, the electricity is going up, the cost of food is going up for single people just as much as it is married people. But that's not the way they think.
If it wasn't about buying votes, you wouldn't have the problems with people, on the street in places like San Francisco and, California and a lot of other cities. So
I want to know what the likelihood is of a married couple being voters versus a single person being a voter. My gut tells me that married people are more likely to be voters than single people, but I don't know if that's true. That's just gut instinct based on how people tend to behave. But a couple in the same income category with no kids will receive $700. So just for having kids, here's an extra $350. Pretty screwed up, if you ask me. Individual taxpayers with $75,000 or less. It breaks this down a bit more, and if you make $150,000 or whatever, that doesn't mean you're not going to get a payment. In fact, payments are gradually phased out with up to $500,000 in income for married couples.
There's a limit. At a certain point, your income level gets to a point where, it's not worth bribing these people because they're not going to vote based on the little bit of money we're going to give them.
Well, if you're making $200-something thousand a year, what the hell is, and they're not giving you $1,050 because you're on the upper end, like you're near the end where they're phasing it out completely. Let's say you make $235,000 a year. What the hell? They're going to send you a $45 check or whatever. I can't imagine that person would even bother to cash that check or deposit it. Well, I guess depositing it would be easy, but it's a waste of their time. So these are already being sent out via direct deposit. Between this month and January, anyone who filed their 2020 state returns is getting access to this money. Here's the important question. Will the payments cause inflation? California is not the only state, they say, to deploy one-time rebates amid budget surpluses. Florida is sending $450 out to certain families with kids. Again, it's families with kids who are getting all of this nonsense when they're the drags on society. They're the least productive people because they have to spend so much of their time simply raising little mouths to feed that aren't contributing anything to society. And I realize I sound horrible saying that, but let's just be honest here. Your 6-year-old child is a net drain on your resources. And if society is giving you money to pay for that child, on society as a whole. And maybe one day that child will grow up to be a contributor to society, but at the moment they're just a waste of time, a waste of money, a waste of resources. And maybe you love that child. That's great. Maybe you want to provide for that child. That's wonderful. You should. But it's not my child. I don't care about it. You deal with it. It's your kid.
This is kind of an interesting situation. I don't necessarily think I would be quite as harsh as you on this subject. However, you're completely right about it's like, why should other people pay for your kids, education or health or, whatever, right? It was your decision. Nobody other than you could have made that decision to bring that kid into the world.
Right, and they should be the ones who, are paying for it.
Right.
I shouldn't have to be paying, or the other people in California shouldn't be having to pay, and the people in Florida shouldn't be having to pay out money because someone else decided to have kids.
If I buy a house with a pool, it's my responsibility to maintain that pool, right?
Absolutely.
Why should this would be like asking the government to pay me money in order to maintain my pool that I had the choice of not buying a house that had that if I didn't want it in the first place.
But see, people think they have a right to have children. They think that,
they have the right to have children, but they don't have the right to my money.
Right. But that's not the way they view it.
Yeah.
And it's completely messed up. And even if it was true that even if everything they said here was true and just, they're arguing that this is going to help people. It might temporarily, right? But this is a Band-Aid to the solution. This is a Band-Aid to the problem, rather. And inflation is going to continue happening because governments are going to continue printing money and prices are going to continue going up. And these stimulus packages will go away and you'll still be broke tomorrow and you'll be clamoring for another stimulus package, and it's just a mess. And I don't think the government is going to be able to solve this problem because it created this problem, and every attempt that it makes to solve this problem only exacerbates it and makes it worse. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up here, including how First Amendment protects coding.
Inflation, a sidelined labor force, and ever-increasing interest rates. It's the perfect storm for pushing the U.S. economy over the edge. Savvy investors are diversifying into gold and silver with BullionMax.com. You can buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live listeners can now order one of BullionMax's most popular products, the Goldback. Now in stock, but supplies are going fast. To get your Goldbacks, go to BullionMax.com/FTL.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at MyMagicMud.com. FTL20, MyMagicMud.com. There are basically 2 types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The White House says no change is being made to America's nuclear posture, despite President Biden's claim on Thursday night that the world may be heading towards Armageddon over the crisis in Ukraine. The president told a private fundraising event that Vladimir Putin's threat to use nuclear weapons is the greatest challenge the world has faced since the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, speaking aboard Air Force One today, insisted the president did not seek to cause alarm.
He was reinforcing what we have been saying, which is how seriously we take these threats about nuclear weapons, as we have done when the Russians have made these threats throughout the conflict. So the kind of irresponsible rhetoric we have seen is no way for the leader of a nuclear-armed state to speak.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Friday that the Kremlin is preparing Russians for the use of nuclear weapons, but he says Moscow is not yet ready to authorize a nuclear strike. The United States has slapped sanctions on several companies it accuses of violating sanctions on North Korea. The move comes after Pyongyang fired 6 ballistic missiles over a 12-day period, all of them violations of UN Security Council resolutions. One of former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's closest allies has been suddenly fired by Prime Minister Liz Truss. Conor Burns was dismissed from his position as Trade Minister on Friday after serious allegations of misconduct were made against him relating to events at this week's Conservative Party conference in Birmingham. He's also had the Conservative whip removed while the claims are investigated. Noah Hoffman is a political correspondent for The Sun newspaper.
In the past, and particularly under the Boris Johnson administration, we saw a lot of dither and delay, but now we've seen very quick action from the whip's office. Conor Burns is no longer a minister. He's had the whip suspended sort of within minutes of that story going out.
The latest jobs numbers in the US have boosted the expectation that the Federal Reserve will soon raise interest rates again. The economy added 263,000 new jobs in September. From FSN's bureau in New York, Gabrielle Farmi with more.
The latest data comes in the midst of historical efforts by the central bank to curb inflation. The Federal Reserve is eager to see a more balanced job market, and with the September report showing few signs of a hiring slowdown, many think this puts the nail in the coffin for another 75 basis point interest rate hike next month.
The Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to human rights activists from Russia, Ukraine and Belarus. 2 organizations, the Ukrainian Center for Civil Liberties and Russia's Memorial, were honored, alongside jailed Belarusian activist Ales Bialyatsky. The committee praised their outstanding efforts to document war crimes and protect civil liberties. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today in more depth at the problems besetting the Kremlin as Russia's military retreats in the face of a counter-offensive by Ukrainian forces. One top Russian-installed official in the annexed region of Kherson said on Thursday that Moscow's Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu should consider killing himself over Russia's military losses. That criticism comes after Vladimir Putin authorized the first partial mobilization of reservists in Russia since the Second World War. Sir Laurie Bristow is a former UK ambassador to Moscow.
Mr. Putin announced that partial mobilization, partly, I think, to try to seize the initiative back, but also partly to seize the initiative domestically. So, there are growing signs of public discontent. Crucially, I think also signs now of potential splits within the elite. It's not delivering more manpower, more military effect on the battlefield. But what it's also doing is producing exactly the opposite, I think, of what was intended, which is mobilizing public opinion in Russia against Mr. Putin's war against Ukraine. So you've got these queues of people trying to leave Russia that you can literally see from space. If I were in the Kremlin, I would now be quite worried about the ability of the leadership actually to keep control.
And even on tightly controlled Russian state television, the criticism of the military's performance in Ukraine is mounting. The main news again, the White House says no change is being made to America's nuclear posture, despite President Biden's claim on Thursday night that the world may be heading towards Armageddon over the crisis in Ukraine. The latest jobs numbers in the United States have boosted the expectation that the Federal Reserve will soon raise interest rates again. And the Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to human rights activists from Russia, Ukraine and Belarus. There's more from us on Twitter @Feature Story. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
After vetting the 37-year-old for factors such as looks, screen presence, and film credits, Hollywood insiders unanimously agreed this week that area man Dennis Kiernan lacks the sheer star power necessary to carry a major motion picture. Industry experts spoke to reporters today about the Charlottesville, Virginia resident, who they say just doesn't have what it takes to crack into the A-list.
Love him or hate him, I think we can all agree that Dennis Kiernan is not a bankable star. He's got to have sex appeal, talent, charisma, and most importantly, that X factor. I should want to sleep with Dennis. I should want to be Dennis. Do I want to be Dennis? No.
Experts agreed the Virginia native and father of one does not have the widespread appeal required to secure a distribution deal with wide release, while also saying they had no reason to believe Kiernan would ever be capable of delivering the type of powerhouse performance that generates buzz at Sundance, Cannes, or Comic-Con.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, where you're invited to take control of the airwaves. 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. That's 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria.
And Chris.
And we've been talking about a variety of subjects, mostly inflation and things of that nature, and, gold, silver, all of that great stuff. But there are other issues going on in the world, and one of those is whether or not code is protected by the First Amendment. And hasn't the Supreme Court at some point weighed in on this subject? Chris, I know you follow this a lot more closely than I do.
Oh, boy.
I'm just curious what the status is.
Well, let me read the story because I think it's going to give us a little bit more background on this. And I think the answer to that is it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Okay.
Because I think what happened was there was something that occurred and then it didn't actually go anywhere because the government backed down, something to that effect.
Okay.
So let's there's a historic case basically, and it's going to get into that. So this basically this is for Marketplace, and it's why the First Amendment also protects code. So the First Amendment serves as a check on government intervention into our public expression through, for example, spoken or visually signed speech, writing, protesting, and coding languages like JavaScript, HTML, Python, and Perl. Computer code as free speech is a relatively new legal concept, but has a complicated history. Marketplace's Kimberly Adams spoke with technology lawyer Kendra Albert, a clinical instructor at Harvard Law School's Cyber Law Clinic, about the history of code as protected expression. The following is an edited transcript of the conversation. So let's see here. Kendra Albert says the seminal case on this is the 1995 case. Yes, this is the big case. It's involving cryptocurrency, or not cryptocurrency, but
encryption,
cryptography.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. Because it used to be illegal to export software or to allow somebody to download software from a server if it had what they would call like high-grade encryption, which just basically means it couldn't be broken easily.
By the government, right? Essentially.
Right, exactly. Yep.
The government made it illegal for the average person to buy or create or download software that allowed you to have secrets from the government.
Yeah, and I shouldn't. We say the government, but it's not necessarily just the government. Potentially, if it's weak enough,
sure,
then not only could the government potentially break it, but so could potentially another party. So they're basically saying it's illegal for you to allow anybody to have privacy or security. And again, this goes all the way back to 1995. So the internet was kind of new at that point, and it's,
these things had to be hashed out, but it's amazing that the government even attempted to do something like this in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, they would have liked to have outlawed encryption, is what it would have come down to, but they were like, okay, well, we have our own, banks, online banking, all of that, online ordering, that was a huge market and it was developing. And it's like, okay, well, we have to have some sort of encryption for that. So the seminal case on this is the 1995 case involving a cryptographer named Daniel Bernstein, who used the United States government for restrictions called export controls on encryption. And at the time, the United States made it illegal to export cryptography software. And it was regulated actually as a munition, like a weapon. Yes, you heard that right.
They couldn't so you could sell it within the U.S., but you could sell it within the U.S., but not outside of the U.S.?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
So there was strong cryptography within the United States, okay, and this is kind of humorous because we're talking about like what's in every single web browser. We're talking about SSL, okay?
Right.
I mean, it wasn't just SSL, but
Well, these things didn't exist back then. Not in 1995.
It's a good question. I'm trying to think when SSL actually came. It would have been about that time frame. By 1997 for sure. But yeah, it's a good question.
Then.
And certainly within the time frame of the regulations, SSL did exist because they had an export version of your web browser and a non-export version for the US market. So yeah.
Insane. And they considered it, what did you say the terminology was? Munitions?
A munition, yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah,
for encryption.
Yes, encryption was considered to be a munition. It sounds insane today, but this is what they said, and they basically just decided, well, some speech is potentially dangerous. You know, it's a security whatever.
Well, I mean, that's certainly true, right? Some speech could be dangerous, right? The state secrets or whatever, but that doesn't mean that you should outlaw it.
Yeah,
you got to take the danger you got to accept that as one of the. I mean, just the realities of having free speech.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's like there's, for the little bit of bad that might occur as a result of free speech, there's far, far more good that comes as a result of having free speech.
Absolutely.
And you don't want to undermine all the good just because there's a few bad actors. And I think people often excuse, well, we have to have this law because, or we can't have good things because, there's these bad people out there. Well, no, you can accept that there's going to be some bad stuff happening in order to have all of the good. So I think it's a very poor, excuse as to why we need to have laws because there's some bad people out there. That's ridiculous.
Well, there's always going to be bad people out there, and the laws don't seem to do anything to stop the bad people out there.
No, of course not. They're reactionary. They're not, they don't stop whatever bad is going to happen. All they can do is like try to scare people into being good, but it doesn't, most people who are doing bad aren't thinking about the consequences of, their actions anyway. So it doesn't even have the effect that the government, tries to sell it to us as, it's
no, and I certainly don't want a more proactive police force out there attempting to prevent crimes before they occur. That's not what I want by any means. But the Netflix series Dahmer, which is some sort of series about the serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer, is popular right now. And, murder was illegal at the time that he did all of that stuff that he did. Yep. The fact that it was illegal didn't stop him. And I don't know about you out there, but if murder was legal right now, I still wouldn't kill anyone.
It's disturbing, but at the same time, like that case is particularly disturbing, right? But at the same time, if you start looking at the numbers, they're really serial killers. They don't generally kill, at least the ones that get caught tend not to have actually killed that many people relative to the number of people the government kills, right, on a regular basis.
Sure.
And it just seems so absurd to be so focused or so freaked out by, the random serial killer or the random murderer who, by the way, most murderers aren't serial killers. So it's not likely, even those who have committed murder, and I'm not just trying to justify murder here, but even those who have committed murder, if you didn't lock them up for the rest of their life, the chances of most of them committing murder again or a second time or a third time is still really, really small. That's not everybody. Obviously, there are some serial killers out there, but most people who commit murder are committing murder because, some sort of relationship, goes bad or something that's not likely to happen again, or they're not likely to kill again, even if they weren't imprisoned. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't be imprisoned, but
right.
It's just like one of these things. It's like our reactions to people doing bad things is often it often doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, absolutely not. And, the reaction isn't going to stop any of it. As we were saying, the possibility of going to prison, it probably never even occurred to Jeffrey Dahmer or many of these other killers out there. That's not what they're thinking about when they commit these acts. They know that they don't need to get caught, but they probably either assume they're never going to get caught, or it's just they don't care. They operate in this world where their moral code has already broken down and they just do whatever they want. Law isn't going to stop them. And law doesn't stop the average person. Again, murder could be legal right now and I still wouldn't kill anyone, and almost everyone listening to me say this also would not kill anyone because we're not killers.
Most people aren't.
It's not the law that's stopping us. It's our own innate understanding of right and wrong. 603-283-6160. It is Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it.
Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, where you are invited to control the airwaves and talk about whatever you want. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. Again, that number is 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria.
And Chris.
And I want to say thank you to Steve Lemansky. That is tonight's amplifier. That means that means Steve is a member of the AMPS program. You can find it at amps.freetalklive.com. Stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. If you value the show, if you like the ideas of Liberty reaching close to, well, we don't know the audience numbers, but it's on more than close to 200 radio stations on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all of that great stuff. You might consider joining the AMPS program. That's the best way to help us reach a larger audience. Again, that's amps.freetalklive.com. It only takes $5 per month. That's what gets you in. Steve, however, is a gold level member, which means that Steve is giving $10 per month. And we don't ask that again. It's just $5 per month. That's our Patreon over there at amps.freetalklive.com. Steve, thank you so much for your contributions, and we hope you are enjoying the show. Speaking of being a live call-in show where people can call in and talk about whatever they want, though, we do have Sarah on the line from New Mexico. Sarah, you're on Free Talk Live.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for your show. I just want to say that New Mexico has been ranked the number second with the most harm done to another person. I didn't never know that they had a rating for that. I think it was announced like that.
So I want to make sure I understand. New Mexico was rated as the second state on this ranking, the second one where there is the most violence done from one person to another, right?
Yeah, like namely like murder. Like if somebody kills somebody, that would count as harm done to another human being.
Well, I would say so.
I would hope so.
Yeah. So I think number one was, I think this is per capita. So Florida was number one, but we came in second because I think.
Well, congratulations. I don't have a silver medal for you.
Yeah. So this is all including assault, attacks on bus drivers, and then rapes, and all of that.
Hold on. Did this ranking specify attacks on bus drivers, or is that you specifying that, Sarah?
Well, no. I mean, harm done to another person. In other words, if you beat up a security when you're robbing something, and then you beat up a security
I know what
guard.
harm is. Thank you.
Yeah. So that. But I never knew that they had this kind of ranking. So it includes everything thrown in altogether, everything that's harm done to another person that has been recorded and collected.
So what do you think about this ranking, Sarah? Do you think we just need one more law to make it super illegal for people to inflict violence on one another?
Well, the thing is, New Mexico has been the criminals come here because of our lenient laws. For some reason, we're just easy with the criminals. The laws, they don't sentence them too much, and I'm thinking that my reasoning is because this state has been founded by a bunch of criminals, right? Originally, look, you're laughing. Look,
I don't know the history of New Mexico, so I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, I mean, he's laughing, but there's some kind of truth to it. Our famous fugitive was Billy the Kid, but besides him, there was a slew of them. They would have gotten hung in the Carolinas and the 13 colonies that run out here and established the state. So this was like the state that nobody wanted, nobody cared. So, and that's who established the law. And
you're doing a great job of selling the state, Sarah. I already want to move there.
I'm wondering, are you proud of this, Sarah?
Well, I mean, I'm not. I really don't like this at all. I want my death penalty back.
Good Lord, Sarah. We've been over this, though. If you have a death penalty, some number of people are wrongfully convicted when they're actually innocent, right?
Oh, look at the homicide rate.
Yes. But you remember this conversation, right, Sarah? Where some number of people in prison did not commit a crime. You remember that, right?
Okay, what about the innocent people that get murdered because they don't have any
You're
penalties
advocating.
at all?
You're literally advocating for innocent people to be murdered by the government, Sarah. I cannot believe that you give a damn about innocent people being murdered by the government when you're literally standing there saying that you don't care if innocent people get murdered by the government.
She's advocating violence.
Okay. Before, when we had the death penalty, there was maybe at the most 50 people getting murdered a year. Now we got 100 people. That's 50 more innocent people getting killed and murdered by murderers because they're fearless. They don't.
Yes, Sarah, but some of those people who get put on the death penalty, who get killed by the government because of the death penalty, some of those people are innocent and did not hurt anyone.
That's correct. I mean, but you know what? That's a minute sacrifice that we have to take.
In order to keep innocent people innocent people from being murdered, you have to murder innocent people. Sarah, are you insane?
That is not insane. Okay,
that is completely insane.
No, that's it. That's it. There's always going to be mistakes that people will always do. That's for sure, and that is really sad.
Sarah, would you like to be the first person to be executed under this new system that you're suggesting here?
No, but you have to be proven. I mean, they have to put you through. They just don't grab anybody and charge you for a homicide.
But they can, and they do. And there have been countless examples of people who did not kill anyone who are in prison for murder, and people who were sentenced to death who did not kill anyone. Countless people. There's the Innocence Project, which evaluates DNA evidence to prove that a lot of these people who've been in prison for 20, 30 years were innocent.
A shocking number of people on death row are innocent, the percentage-wise. I forget what the number is, but it's really high.
But what do you think about our number second ranking with a homicide so high that we came in second with the most harm done to another human being because of I think we killed about 100.
You know what I think, Sarah?
Murderers.
I think that violence is not going to put an end to violence. And that's ultimately what you're advocating. You think that the government should inflict violence on people, and somehow this is going to make people less violent. But it's not. It's just changing who the victims of violence are.
Yeah, it's one thing to defend yourself from violence by killing somebody, and it's a totally another matter to go after somebody who's already been arrested and kill them for what they did.
I cannot abide the death penalty. And for Sarah to admit this, to pretend like she cares about innocent people getting murdered when she's sitting there acknowledging that, yes, if we have the death penalty, then innocent people will get killed by the government. Yet she pretends to care about innocent people getting murdered as she's advocating that innocent people should be murdered. It's completely insane. And I don't know how to reach her when she's that damaged as a human being that she could actually argue something so horrific, so immoral, and do it sincerely. She's not trolling. That's really what she believes. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It is Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The White House says no change is being made to America's nuclear posture, despite President Biden's claim on Thursday night that the world may be heading towards Armageddon over the crisis in Ukraine. The president told a private fundraising event that Vladimir Putin's threat to use nuclear weapons is the greatest challenge the world has faced since the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, speaking aboard Air Force One today, insisted the president did not seek to cause alarm.
He was reinforcing what we have been saying, which is how seriously we take these threats about nuclear weapons, as we have done when the Russians have made these threats throughout the conflict. So the kind of irresponsible rhetoric we have seen is no way for the leader of a nuclear-armed state to speak.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Friday that the Kremlin is preparing Russians for the use of nuclear weapons, but he says Moscow is not yet ready to authorize a nuclear strike. The United States has slapped sanctions on several companies it accuses of violating sanctions on North Korea. The move comes after Pyongyang fired 6 ballistic missiles over a 12-day period, all of them violations of UN Security Council resolutions. One of former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's closest allies has been suddenly fired by Prime Minister Liz Truss. Conor Burns was dismissed from his position as Trade Minister on Friday after serious allegations of misconduct were made against him relating to events at this week's Conservative Party conference in Birmingham. He's also had the Conservative whip removed while the claims are investigated. Noah Hoffman is a political correspondent for The Sun newspaper.
In the past, and particularly under the Boris Johnson administration, we saw a lot of dither and delay, but now we've seen very quick action from the whip's office. Conor Burns is no longer a minister. He's had the whip suspended sort of within minutes of that story going out.
The latest jobs numbers in the US have boosted the expectation that the Federal Reserve will soon raise interest rates again. The economy added 263,000 new jobs in September. From FSN's bureau in New York, Gabrielle Farmi with more.
The latest data comes in the midst of historical efforts by the central bank to curb inflation. The Federal Reserve is eager to see a more balanced job market, and with the September report showing few signs of a hiring slowdown, many think this puts the nail in the coffin for another 75 basis point interest rate hike next month.
The Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to human rights activists from Russia, Ukraine and Belarus. 2 organizations, the Ukrainian Center for Civil Liberties and Russia's Memorial, were honored alongside jailed Belarusian activist Ales Bialyatsky. The committee praised their outstanding efforts to document war crimes and protect civil liberties. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live with Arya and Chris on this Friday evening. And Freedom's Phoenix is your source for all news, economic news, government overreach, insane government spending, and more. Get today's headlines all in one place. And from a fresh libertarian perspective, you can find this and more at freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S, phoenix.com. Run by Ernie Hancock, I believe, who does the show Declare Your Independence. A great show. Is on the LRN.FM network. If you haven't checked it out, definitely do so. Let's keep going with the phones. However, we have Turd Ferguson on the line. Turd, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, what's up, guys? So the reason why I'm calling in tonight is because I actually wanted to talk about this total virtue signal that Joe Biden pulled yesterday, where at the very last minute that he possibly could, so his party, to try to reduce the chance of the shellacking that his party will take in the midterms, he disingenuously pardoned a bunch of marijuana offenders, which by the way, I agree with, and I don't think that anybody should be in jail for this in the first place.
Oh yeah, I had seen bits and pieces about that. I didn't follow it very closely, but I saw, I think, hundreds or maybe thousands of pardons. I don't remember the exact number, but it looked like a lot, right?
I think it was a lot, but this is why I don't buy it. he didn't do it because it's the right thing to do. And because no politicians ever do anything because it's the right thing to do.
Sure.
He did it because the only chance he has left to not take the shellacking in the midterms is to try to motivate a bunch of young people who don't know any better about any other political issues besides these really super surface level social issues that, their friends tell them are important. And if Joe Biden really cared about what he says he cares about, like letting people who committed these quote unquote crimes out of jail, he would have done that years ago when he first became the president. And he's just now doing it. What the hell? If you really care so much about these people, why wouldn't you have just let them out of jail when you became the president? Why would you make them sit in jail for another 2 years for nothing? I mean, this is ridiculous. And by the way, this guy literally does everything by executive order, and he gave us all the littlest, smallest piece of nothing. Just this virtue signal. What he should have done, if he really wanted to do the right thing, what he should have done is waved his executive order magic wand and said, all these drug laws are entirely unconstitutional. We should just completely legalize marijuana. I am creating an executive order right now based on the Interstate Commerce Clause that the federal government controls interstate commerce, and I am legalizing marijuana for everyone, including homegrown. If he really wanted to do the right thing, that's what he would have done. But instead, all he did, because he's a corporatist and because he's a piece of crap, is this virtue signal where he could just let a couple thousand people out of jail and be like, and then to all the young people in America be like, oh yeah, look how great I am. I'm the nicest president that's ever lived. Dude, I hate this guy. I hate these politicians.
I do too. I mean, and I think you got it right here going into the midterms. I mean, we're not even a month away from the election at this point. I mean, he could not have timed this in a less obvious way, right? This is clearly done in order to get votes just in time for the midterm election, right? This is to motivate people who are anti-drug war and people who are on the left in particular to come out and vote for a president who otherwise isn't very interesting, to come out and vote for Democrats because he's not up for re-election yet.
You're giving him too much credit. It's not even for that. It's just for the young people who are so dumb that they can't understand how the economy actually affects their lives, how all these regulations on the energy industry and these bullcrap climate change regulations, how they don't understand how they're destroying their lives. So what he does is he just does this nonsense, and then and because the only people that he's fooling with this are these little 18 and 19-year-old kids that just figured out how to vote yesterday, and this is just this Uno wild card that he pulled out of his back pocket. Yeah, he's got nothing, dude.
But he did release, or he is releasing rather. Well, he pardoned them, so presumably they're being released as we speak. He did pardon 6,500 people, and that's significant. It's not enough for me to vote for him because he didn't do this for moral reasons. Obviously, he did this to help Democrats in the midterm elections.
And by the way, 6,500 people, that's actually not that much. I mean, if you want to talk about all the people that are actually in jail right now for not doing anything wrong, 6,500 is almost nothing. I mean, there are 350 million people in America, and I'm sure probably close to 1 out of 5 of them actually smoke pot. And he couldn't give anybody anything real. So he does this, I'll let 6,500 people out of jail. I hate this guy, dude. This guy's a piece of crap.
Well, he can only pardon people who faced federal charges. He can't pardon people who violated state. Well, I guess he could, but he didn't.
Right. Yeah, that's because he's going to do the bare minimum and then expect a bunch of dumb 18-year-olds to come out and vote for him. But
that's a really good question. Why didn't he pardon, people who were guilty of all simple marijuana possession? Because I can't imagine there are very many people who are in federal prison for simple marijuana possession.
It was weird. It was weird too because it was only simple marijuana possession. If you were convicted of anything else, you weren't pardoned, as I understand it.
Yeah, that's not very many people. You're right about that, Turd.
I want to know how you end up in a federal prison over simple possession in the first place, and only simple possession.
There's no simple possession. There are no simple possession. No, he just let out a bunch of drug dealers, probably like high-end drug dealers that actually murdered people that happen to have marijuana on them. So actually, if anything, you probably did a net negative for society. But this guy is just such a virtue signaler, and he just screws up at every turn. So he just uses this as an Uno wild card, and it's just total nonsense. And that's all I got. But thanks for taking my call, guys.
Yeah, thanks for the call. It's an interesting topic, and I hadn't paid any attention to it prior to this exact moment, but I'm surprised seeing this here that there are 6,500 people nationwide who are in federal prison for simple marijuana possession. I would expect them to be in federal prison for something more significant.
It does seem a little messed up, and it does beg the question of how did they end up there in the first place over simple possession. The only thing I can think of is these are the people who maybe didn't take a plea deal, or and they were being pressed to testify against somebody who was maybe the government was trying to go after. For something more significant.
But aren't these, wouldn't all of these be state matters? How does the federal government end up getting jurisdiction over something like this in the first place?
There's a federal law on it.
I suppose.
And their argument is, and I don't agree with this, but their argument is it affects interstate commerce. And I don't know if you recall what the details of it, like the justification for restricting marijuana is, but it's effectively it affects interstate commerce, but it would also affect what they claim is something to the effect of, even if you grow marijuana right for yourself and only yourself, and you never sell it or distribute it, you're still affecting the price interstate, and therefore they can charge you with simple possession.
Well, you're affecting the value of, Cheetos or whatever you get when you're high and you have the munchies.
Yes. Yes, but this is exactly the point. It's absolutely insane. But because if you didn't grow it, the assumption is that you would then go out and buy it, and that would thus affect the market, and that would then somehow affect it interstate.
But it's illegal for you to go out and buy it, right? So they're protecting the illegal interstate market.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. And I'm surprised to hear that this blanket pardon included 6,500 people. That seems like a high number, but I mean, I can't say it's a bad thing. It's a good thing. I'm glad Biden did it. I just wish he had done it for the right reasons instead of doing it to help Democrats in the midterm elections. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up here. It is Free Talk Live.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. 0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and if you haven't already, you should be getting your Porcupine Freedom Festival tickets because it's going to sell out, I suspect. It's sold out 2 years in a row, and I suspect it will sell out again for a third year. And the Fork Fest. Fork Fest is moving to in front of the Porcupine Freedom Festival this year, which means it's starting on, I think, June the 15th. Through June the 18th. I think those are the dates. I don't actually have them in front of me because bold of you to presume that I'm good at my job. It is June the 15th through the 18th, though, and that's at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. There's no ticket for Fork Fest, so you don't have to worry about it selling out. All you have to do is reserve your camping site, motel room, or RV site with Rogers Campground from June the 15th through the 18th, and that gets you in. So if you don't have tickets to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, you can still come to Fork Fest in theory. I imagine if Rogers Campground sells out that for Fork Fest, that they will just let you know when you attempt to, reserve your site. But check it out, forkfest.party. It's the pre-party to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, sort of. It's a more laid-back, more chilled, less organized environment. It's a lot of fun. Come hang out with us at forkfest.party. That's the unofficial website. Let's keep going with the phones. We have Mortified Penguin on the line. Penguin, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, guys. I wanted to call in and talk a little bit about political theory, basically the concept of federalism. And, just a refresher for the listeners, federalism is when the states basically have, the political questions are reserved mostly for the states, kind of as mostly intended by the Constitution, and the states have more purview of the laws and regulations of the land. And it's as opposed to, and this is kind of confusing because of the name, basically something very similar to what Chris was talking about, which is kind of when they relitigated the whole constitutional system by one of the main things anyway was we mentioned interstate commerce, where everything is basically under the purview of the federal government because interstate commerce is redefined to mean basically, anything you do that has could have any possible effect on the nation and interstate commerce between states is now purview of the federal government. And they said, well, that just means everything can be under the federal government, which is kind of a ridiculous system. Like, the system was kind of made with a point. So libertarians like to argue, federalism, or would you have something like what if the federal government, protects the right to abortion, or makes weed legal, even though some states make it illegal? I'm not sure what would happen in that case. Well, there's some questions when you.
Well, the federal government wouldn't make weed legal. It would repeal the federal prohibitions on marijuana consumption and growing and selling and all of that. But that wouldn't prevent any states from making it illegal. And I suspect some of them would, like Mississippi and Tennessee and some of these Christian states, these Republican states, almost certainly would make marijuana illegal. And there's nothing preventing them from doing that. Just because the federal government hasn't made something illegal doesn't mean the states can't.
Yeah, and there's some pros and cons here. So, like, the pros, more people might have, they would have their say. The states might be different, and they may compete for different people and people to move maybe to their state of their choice. And the states people existing in the states could advocate for laws that are more, suitable to their interests. The cons, though, on the other hand, is there's not going to be a national divorce. There's not going to be anything close to that because, the political divides are a lot more complicated. It's urban, rural. Every state has red and blue-leaning people and liberal and more conservative people and religious and non and such. So you're not going to get a clean break.
If people actually followed the Constitution and there was a classical liberal government that, was restrained and, just actually followed the Constitution and hadn't reinterpreted the Interstate Commerce Clause to basically mean everything, then the need for a national divorce wouldn't be as big a deal because the economy would be stronger. And if someone wasn't happy in whatever state they were in, they could easily just pick up and move to another state, one that better suited their interests, their goals, and their desires. That's just not the way things are. We are extremely divided. The federal government is extremely... The national divorce isn't because New Hampshire wants to get away from Vermont or California or any of these others. It's because the state of New Hampshire wants to get away from the federal government, which is its own distinct thing. It's not the other states that we have an issue with. It's the federal government that is the issue.
Sure, and the states are fairly big units, and in the original system, the states had all sorts of powers, whatever powers they want to give themselves. They've moderated that a little bit, but what I've come down to is basically this. If you're a libertarian, you don't necessarily want closer and more effective government on you because it can often be way more harsh, and the states are plenty powerful in the governmental powers they wield. Most of the powers that you interact with, even now, it's iffy, but you still have a lot of state government policing your power. It's called the police power effect. But what I come down to this: if you're going
I've never heard of the police power.
Well, it's the power of the states to basically pass laws and regulate people's lives, and that's basically originally supposed to be the power of the states, and the federal government has, of course, kind of inserted itself there. But what I've basically come down to, just to make my point...
Well, states had constitutions as well, so, I mean, in theory, if the federal government had followed its constitution and the states had followed theirs, there wouldn't be so many of these laws in the first place, so it wouldn't be as oppressive.
States definitely have a lot of power over the individual, whether or not the federal government, independent of the federal government.
Right.
Yeah, but basically, I'm going to say this. If you're going to have a liberal democracy, if you're going to have this kind of system, it really comes down to a very simple question. There's a lot more pros and cons that I could go, and it's very tough thing. But when it comes down to it, it's just too big of a political unit. 350 million people, this huge continent. It's a continent-sized country. It's just too big of a scale to run this kind of liberal democratic system. Even the states are pretty big. The states are plenty big enough to be their own independent states, as they were, which they were intended to be. And we cannot just run a liberal democracy of this size at this scale. It doesn't scale up. It doesn't scale up to a state, probably most of the big states. It certainly doesn't scale up to this giant morass where we can't get along on anything.
Well, I mean, certainly. And the idea as a whole was always flawed, as far as I can tell, because there's always going to be disagreement, right? And what the federal government does, or what the existence of any government does, is it takes people who disagree and it makes one of them miserable. right? Whether you do it at the city level or the state level, this is why I'm an anarchist and not a statist or whatever terminology, or federalist or whatever you would like, or a countyist or a cityist or whatever, because anytime you have a government, it doesn't matter what level you do it at, you're going to have half of the population utilizing that apparatus, the state apparatus, to make the other half miserable.
Yeah, this is a problem with democracy. It's kind of an interesting situation. I don't know that another form of government, I guess, is necessarily better, but at the same time, it's not like democracy has worked that great for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much tonight for the call, Penguin. I think it was Winston Churchill who said that democracy is the worst form of government that we've tried yet, except for all of the others that we've tried. And I mean, that's painfully true. Government is evil. It's a flawed idea. It doesn't matter what iteration or what mechanism we use to make the government happen. It's always going to be flawed because the idea itself is flawed, that we need some institution, some central authority to tell person A that they have to do what person B wants. It's a terrible idea from the beginning, whether you're a conservative or a liberal.
What is it? Democracy is sort of like the survival of the fittest, right? It's whoever can garner more power is the person who dictates.
It's ultimately just a matter of who has the power, and that they're the ones who determine what is and isn't right. They're the one, and that's screwed up.
And it's not even, and the crazy thing is, it's not necessarily even the majority. It's a minority that influences the majority, and so it's so twisted. It's like it's not even like it's benefiting the majority because it's the majority we don't really have as a majority or a population, we don't really have a good way of figuring out, who's going to do what, right? They're all liars, right? I mean, it's like
we definitely don't have a consensus on what the majority is or what they think or whatever. Everyone seems to think they're the majority or they're in the majority. It's like the majority of people agree with me
not
or
in the
whatever.
majority.
Like, no, but I mean, no,
most
libertarians,
people do.
we
You're
are
right.
definitely
You're right.
not. But most people think they are, and that therefore anything that they want should be allowable, should be law or whatever. I disagree. You can chat with us about it in the meantime on our social media server. You can find that at social.freetalklive.com. We'll be back same time tomorrow. That's social.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community